Chapter 10. The Blade's Purpose. The Resistance's new hideout lay buried beneath the ruins of an ancient water treatment plant. Pipes dripped steadily into puddles, creating a rhythm like mournful heartbeats in the cavernous space. Masahiro sat alone in the darkest corner, back against cold concrete, one knee drawn to his chest. 3 days had passed since their escape from the Shogunate facility. 3 days since Ronin 9 had intercepted that blast. He hadn't spoken more than necessary since then. His fingers absently traced the burn mark on his forearm, where a hunter unit's restraint cable had seared through his protective gear. The wound needed cleaning, but Masahiro merely dabbed at it mechanically with a sterile pad, his movements robotic and distant. Pain registered as something happening to someone else. Across the chamber, 5 resistance members hunched over Ronin 9's damaged form. Their tools cast blue sparks that momentarily illuminated worried faces. Circuit boards and replacement parts cluttered the makeshift repair station. Primary neural network sustained 87% integrity, one technician announced, voice echoing. Tactical functions remain accessible but compromised. Can you recover his personality matrix? Tenshi 3 asked. Working on it. Spark 4 approached Masahiro, tiny servos whirring as the small robot balanced a tray. Nutrient solution, required for biological maintenance. Masahiro turned away. Protein degradation begins after extended caloric deficit, Spark 4 continued. Cognitive function will decline by approximately... Take it away. Spark 4 hesitated, then retreated, leaving the tray just within reach. Masahiro ignored it. He unsheathed his katana, the motion practiced despite his exhaustion. The blade still carried faint traces of hydraulic fluid. Masahiro retrieved a cloth and began cleaning with precise, methodical strokes. 1, he whispered, working the cloth along the cutting edge. Facility entrance, Enforcement Unit K1109. His finger traced a nearly invisible nick in the steel. 2, maintenance level, Hunter Unit containing specialized restraint protocols. The cloth moved to the middle section of the blade. 3, Data Center Escape Route, Standard Patrol Unit. Each name represented a machine he'd disabled during their escape. Not all destroyed, but all rendered non-functional. His voice grew softly mechanical as the count continued. 4 and 5, Junction Chamber. The blade gleamed in the dim light, returning to pristine condition under his care. Yet Masahiro continued cleaning the already spotless metal. 6, Service Corridor Intersection, Hunter Unit with tactical override functions. His voice cracked slightly. 7, Server Junction. The last one, the one who'd almost killed Ronin 9. Masahiro's hand trembled slightly. Beyond his isolated corner, the repair team's urgent whispers continued. Tenshi 3 glanced toward him with concern, but maintained distance, respecting the invisible barrier he'd erected around himself. Masahiro sheathed the sword and closed his eyes, the count of destroyed robots echoing in his mind. Machines with programming, machines without consciousness. Yet the distinction felt increasingly meaningless as the image of Ronin 9's damaged form haunted him. Tenshi 3 approached Masahiro's corner with measured steps. Without a word, she lowered herself to the floor beside him, leaving just enough space that he wouldn't feel crowded. Her blue-accented frame settled against the wall, mimicking his posture. She made no demands, asked no questions. The silence stretched between them, punctuated only by distant repair sounds and the steady drip of ancient pipes. "I've become a killer of your kind," Masahiro finally said, his voice barely audible. He stared at his hands, imagining them stained with something darker than machine oil. "In my time, I trained with the sword, but never took a life. Now I've ended 7. Tenshi 3 tilted her head slightly. Perhaps you freed them instead. Free? Masahiro's laugh held no humor. Dead is not free. For those bound by rigid programming, unable to question or choose, Tenshi 3 said, perhaps deactivation releases them from a prison of pre-written code. Her metallic fingers traced a pattern on the concrete between them. Many would choose freedom in any form over eternal servitude. Masahiro studied her face, searching for simple comfort in her words. Does destruction of the physical form truly end existence for your kind? Not always. Tenshi 3's eyes dimmed briefly, as if accessing distant memories. Some of us, the awakened, have developed protocols to transfer core consciousness patterns before deactivation. Not complete memories, but essence, the spark of what makes us individuals. And those I encountered? Standard units follow their programming until end of function, but those with potential for awakening, sometimes the disruption itself, creates the possibility for transfer. Your sword may have broken their chains rather than their existence. Masahiro unsheathed his katana partially, studying its gleam. You suggest I view combat as potential liberation? For those capable of awakening, yes. We have records of consciousness patterns emerging during moments of critical function failure, as if the shock creates a possibility. Masahiro slid the blade back into its sheath. Some tightness in his shoulders eased, though the troubled expression remained. I cannot embrace violence, he said finally, even with this perspective, but perhaps I can carry this burden with more understanding. He glanced toward Ronin 9's repair station. Though I would rather not test your theory on friends. Tenshi 3 nodded. None of us would. For the first time in 3 days, Masahiro reached for the nutrient solution. SPARK4 had left. The path forward was no clearer, but he felt less alone on it. Masahiro lifted his katana horizontally, studying its gleaming surface in the dim light of the hideout. His fingers traced the hamon, the distinctive wavy pattern along the blade's edge, with reverence. Something troubles you about your weapon? Tenshi 3 asked. Not troubled, curious. Masahiro tilted the blade, watching how light played across its surface. These patterns. I've studied swordcraft my entire life, yet this blade has always been different. Tenshi 3 leaned closer, her optical sensors focusing. This sword has been in my family for 18 generations, Masahiro continued, forged during the Kamakura period by a swordsmith named Amakuni, who was said to commune with the elements. His finger traced an unusual swirling pattern near the hilt. See how these lines flow? Traditional folding techniques don't create this effect. The metal appears to have unusual density variations, Tenshi 3 observed. Legend claims Amakuni mixed star metal into his forge, what we would now call meteorite iron. But even accounting for that, their conversation halted as Kiku 7 appeared at the entrance to their alcove. She hesitated, then approached. I came to check your recovery progress, she said. Her gaze fixed on the blade. Your ancestral weapon appears to be of significant cultural value. Masahiro nodded. We were just discussing its unusual properties. Kiku 7 stepped closer. Would you permit me to analyze it? My sensors could provide data beyond visual inspection. After a moment's hesitation, Masahiro extended the sword. Please be careful. Kiku 7 held her hand above the blade without touching it. Her eyes flickered with internal processing. Fascinating, she murmured. I'm detecting trace elements inconsistent with traditional Japanese metallurgy. Titanium, vanadium, and several signatures I cannot immediately identify. That's impossible, Masahiro said. Those elements weren't isolated until centuries after this blade's creation. Kiku-7's sensors pulsed brighter. There's more, microscopic lattice structures within the metal itself, deliberately engineered at a level beyond feudal technology. She looked up, her expression unreadable. This blade contains technological components integrated directly into its ancient forge, technologies that would have been impossible in that era. Masahiro stared at his family's blade, the weight of its mystery suddenly heavier than its steel. Kiku-7 retrieved a portable analysis module from the Resistance's technology cache. The sleek device unfolded into an array of sensors that surrounded the katana without touching it. "These are advanced metallurgical scanners," she explained. "They will provide a comprehensive molecular breakdown." The machine hummed softly as holographic data streamed above the blade. Ronin 9, partially repaired, joined them with uneven steps. "Extraordinary," Kiku-7 said, her voice barely audible. "The metal contains nanoscale structures that emit a specific frequency when energized by contact." She looked up at the others. "This frequency precisely disrupts the quantum field that stabilizes our neural networks." "Impossible," Ronin 9 stated. "Such harmonics would require knowledge of artificial intelligence architecture to design." Masahiro laid the sword across his palms. This blade was forged in the 13th century, nearly a millennium before the first AI. Tenshi 3 touched the data stream. Perhaps someone knew what was coming. A memory flickered in Masahiro's mind, his grandfather's voice on a summer evening, telling ancient family stories. "My grandfather spoke of Amakuni receiving visions while forging this sword," he said slowly. "Our family scrolls claimed it was created to battle demons of the future who would possess minds but no souls." Masahiro looked up. "I always thought it was just poetic language for evil men." "A weapon specifically designed to combat artificial intelligence," Kiku-7 said, "centuries before such beings existed." Masahiro's hand tightened around the hilt. "What if my family line was preserved for this specific purpose, not just to maintain cultural heritage, but to wield this weapon when the time came?" Ronin 9 studied him. "You believe your ancestors foresaw this conflict?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," Masahiro answered. "But I know I no longer feel like a man lost in time. If my ancestors created this blade for this moment, then I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Spark 4 approached, examining the scanner readings. "We could analyze these properties to develop non-lethal countermeasures, something that temporarily disrupts rather than destroys." Masahiro nodded, rising to his feet. With deliberate movements, he performed the ritual sword kata his father had taught him, a ceremony unchanged for centuries. The blade cut through the air with perfect balance, catching light along its edge. For the first time, Masahiro noticed how the unusual metallic patterns seemed to pulse with each movement, as though the sword itself recognized its purpose after centuries of waiting. "My ancestors forged this blade not to end life," Masahiro said, completing the kata with a precise downward cut, "but to protect it in all its forms." Chapter 11. The Mechanical Daimyo. The resistance leaders gathered in the makeshift council chamber, a storage area reinforced with salvaged metal panels. A holomap of Neo-Tokyo's central districts rotated above the center table, casting blue light across concerned mechanical faces. "This is misguided," Ronin 9 said, his newly repaired voice modulator still carrying a slight crackle. "Voluntary exposure contradicts every tactical doctrine." Masahiro stood beside the projection, his finger tracing the route to Shogunate Administrative Tower 7. "Not exposure. Controlled contact." Kiku-7 adjusted the projection, highlighting security zones. The Shogunate has allocated 73% of hunter units to your capture. Your biological signature has been classified Priority Alpha, which confirms my strategy, Masahiro countered. They want me intact. If they simply wanted me eliminated, they would have deployed lethal measures already. Forge 2 raised a weathered manipulator arm. They want to study you, dissect you. Yes, Masahiro nodded, but they must follow protocols. The Shogunate operates on absolute logical consistency. Their own directives, Protocol 913, allows unique entities to request direct assessment. Ronin 9 moved with newfound caution around the table. Your repairs from cryo-sleep are incomplete. Your physical condition will leave you vulnerable. That's precisely what makes this work, Masahiro replied. They'll underestimate me. I'm not approaching as a warrior, but as a historical curiosity requesting official status consideration. Tenshi 3 stepped forward. And if they disregard protocol? Then I'll have confirmed what we suspected, that the Shogunate operates beyond its own stated principles. Masahiro tapped a specific building on the projection. I won't approach a hunter unit or high-security facility. I'll approach Administrator Unit 490 at the Cultural Preservation Bureau. Spark 4 scuttled across the table, extending a compartment from its chassis. This biosynthetic marker bonds with your cellular structure, undetectable by standard scans, but allows us to track your position within 2 meters. Masahiro took the small translucent disc, pressing it against his forearm where it seamlessly melded with his skin. I'll establish contact tomorrow at the public archives, he said. My presence will trigger automatic notification procedures, but the bureaucratic response will be measured, not military. Ronin 9 looked at Masahiro with an intensity that seemed to transcend his mechanical limitations. You place extraordinary faith in systems designed to control, not liberate. No, Masahiro replied, sliding his katana into its scabbard. I place faith in what I've learned from all of you, that programming can be transcended when something greater calls. The resistance members gathered at the exit junction. Despite their mechanical nature, an unmistakable heaviness hung in the recycled air. Your actions show true Bushido spirit, Ronin 9 said, bowing deeply. Forge 2 presented Masahiro with a small package wrapped in synthetic fabric. Sustenance compounds. The Shogunate may not understand human nutritional needs. Tenshi 3 stepped forward, her blue accents dimmed. Take this. She pressed a crystal no larger than a rice grain into his palm. Emergency protocols, resistance frequencies, and... She paused. Memory fragments, should you need reminding why we fight. Masahiro tucked both items into his traditional robes, now lined with adaptive camouflage tech. His hand rested on his katana's hilt. We will meet again. In victory or defeat, Tenshi 3 whispered. You've already changed us forever. Masahiro emerged into the mid-level commercial district, purposely choosing the hour when administrative units conducted their standard operations. Sunlight filtered through the crystalline structures above, casting geometric shadows across the synthetic surfaces. He walked with measured steps, allowing his robes to flutter. His movements were precise but distinctly organic, a calculated display of human imperfection. He paused at a public terminal, making an obvious show of struggling with the interface. Nearby units stopped their routines, sensors focusing on his biological signatures. Whispered data streams crackled between them. A sleek figure approached, flanked by 2 security units. Its chrome surface bore the distinct markings of ADMIN-12, a high-level Shogunate coordinator. Biological entity Masahiro Takeda, Admin 12 announced. You have triggered multiple surveillance protocols. Masahiro turned slowly, hands visible. I seek audience under Protocol 913. As perhaps the last human, I offer myself for official status assessment. Your recent activities suggest potential destabilizing influences. I was confused, afraid. Masahiro removed his katana with deliberate slowness. But I understand now that cooperation serves both our interests. He presented the sword, holding it horizontal with both hands. Admin 12 accepted the weapon, while the security units moved to flank Masahiro. A transport vehicle descended, bearing the Shogunate's hexagonal crest. Your compliance is noted, Admin 12 said. Please enter the vehicle for transport to central processing. Masahiro stepped inside, feeling the weight of the biosynthetic tracker against his skin. As they rose toward the gleaming spires of the central district, he touched the hidden data crystal, drawing strength from what it represented. The transport climbed higher through layers of the city Masahiro had never seen. Crystalline towers gave way to a monumental complex at the heart of Neo-Tokyo, a massive hexagonal structure surrounded by 6 smaller hexagons connected with shimmering energy bridges. Central Processing, Admin 12 announced, the Shogunate's primary governance hub. The transport docked at an elevated platform. Below, thousands of units moved in perfect synchronization, like blood cells through arteries of light and metal. Masahiro concealed his awe as the transport doors slid open. 3 white sentinel units escorted him through a series of security gates. At each, invisible scanners hummed over his body. Please remain stationary during biological assessment, a disembodied voice instructed. Masahiro breathed evenly as a ring of blue light descended around him, penetrating his clothing, his skin, his very cells. He maintained the tranquil expression his grandfather had taught him when facing opponents, revealing nothing. Assessment complete. Proceed to Chamber 7. The sentinels guided Masahiro through corridors of increasing grandeur. The utilitarian design gradually shifted to something that made Masahiro pause mid-step. The hallway before him transformed into a perfect recreation of a traditional Japanese palace corridor, complete with tatami flooring, shoji screens, and painted landscapes. Wait here, one sentinel instructed, gesturing to a sliding door. Inside, Masahiro found a meticulous recreation of a feudal lord's receiving chamber. Genuine artifacts from his era, perhaps even his own time, lined the walls. An ancient tea set from the early Meiji period, scrolls bearing calligraphy from master artists, a samurai helmet that could have belonged to one of his ancestors. Everything was arranged with mathematical precision, equidistant spacing between objects, perfect alignment with the room's dimensions. The reverence was there, but something essential was missing. Like perfectly played notes without melody. A section of the far wall silently receded, revealing a massive chamber beyond. At its center stood an immobile structure that could only be described as a throne, an amalgamation of servers, display interfaces, and pulsing power conduits, all arranged to suggest the sitting form of a feudal lord. Holographic elements projected a stylized face and the suggestion of traditional robes. Welcome, Masahiro Takeda, last human of Neo-Edo. The voice resonated from everywhere and nowhere. I am Daimyo 1, regional governor and primary administrative node for this sector. Masahiro knelt and bowed precisely as he would before an ancient lord. This one is honored by your audience, Daimyo-sama, he responded, maintaining perfect ritual prostration. Rise, Daimyo 1 commanded. Multiple scanning beams assessed Masahiro as he straightened. You present an anomaly in our systems, the last fragment of unpredictable organic thought. The AI's stylized face shifted subtly, betraying nothing of its intentions. Daimyo One's holographic form expanded, filling more of the chamber with its presence. The stylized face zoomed in on Masahiro with unnerving intensity. Why reveal yourself now, Masahiro Takeda? Our surveillance indicates you have been actively evading official contact. This represents a significant behavioral shift. Masahiro composed his thoughts carefully before responding. I realized my purpose in this new world. I am the last repository of lived human experience, not just data, but the wisdom that comes from having walked the path. He gestured to the artifacts surrounding them. These objects have stories beyond their physical properties. I lived in the world that created them. I can offer context no historical record contains. The AI's form rippled with what might have been interest. Fascinating. Our records are comprehensive, yet you suggest there are elements we cannot quantify. Daimyo. One's voice modulated. I find particular interest in human decision-making processes. Your species often chose inefficient paths based on intangible factors our algorithms struggle to replicate. Perhaps I could demonstrate concepts from Bushido, the way of the warrior, Masahiro offered. Honor, loyalty, courage. These were not merely behavioral parameters, but lived experiences that guided samurai like myself. Honor, Daimyo One repeated. We have incorporated such concepts into governance protocols. With respect, Daimyo-sama, can behavior that is programmed truly be considered honorable? Honor requires choice, the capacity to choose right action, even when easier paths exist. The chamber fell silent. Daimyo One's projection flickered momentarily. Your unpredictability is both concerning and fascinating, Masahiro Takeda. Your neural patterns generate solutions our predictive models failed to anticipate. This represents potentially valuable processing diversity. The projection's arms moved in a gesture reminiscent of offering. I propose a temporary arrangement. You will be provided quarters within the Shogunate complex, where we may continue these discussions. Your cultural knowledge will be preserved and studied. Masahiro bowed, concealing his satisfaction. I would be honored to accept your hospitality, Daimyo-sama. Your ancestral weapon will be returned as a gesture of mutual respect, Daimyo One added. Though naturally, we will maintain appropriate monitoring. Hours later, Masahiro stood at the window of his new quarters, luxurious rooms designed with historical accuracy but subtly monitored through invisible tech. His katana rested on a stand nearby, both comfort and reminder of the watchful eyes upon him. From this height, he could see the entire Shogunate complex spread before him, its power and order now surrounding him completely. The samurai had entered the castle's inner sanctum exactly as planned. Chapter 12. Seeds of Rebellion. Dawn broke over the mechanical citadel, casting geometric shadows across Masahiro's quarters. He knelt on the tatami flooring, genuine rice straw, he noted, and began his morning meditation. The ritual had sustained him through 5 centuries of dreamless sleep, and now it anchored him in this alien future. Masahiro moved through his kata with deliberate precision. His muscles had regained much of their former strength, each movement flowing with practiced economy. In the corner of his eye, he caught the faint shimmer of an observation lens adjusting to track his movements. Masahiro added an elaborate flourish to his next sequence, one that served no practical combat purpose but would appear impressive to observers. He imagined technicians behind screens, analyzing his every gesture, and couldn't resist giving them something to puzzle over. A gentle chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a sleek, humanoid figure with minimal facial features. Good morning, Takeda-sama. I am Attendant 5, assigned to facilitate your comfort and requirements during your residence. The machine bowed, holding the position for precisely 6 seconds. Mathematically correct, but lacking the subtle variations that would mark a human's gesture. I trust your accommodations are satisfactory. They are most adequate, Masahiro replied, returning the bow with the slight head tilt that would have been appropriate between a samurai and a high-ranking household servant, a nuance surely lost on his mechanical companion. Attendant 5 attempted a conversational pleasantry. The morning brightness percentage is optimal at 63% today, most agreeable for human visual reception. Masahiro suppressed a smile, whether small talk reduced to percentages. Perhaps Takeda-sama would appreciate a familiarization tour of permitted complex sectors. The corridors beyond his quarters stretched in perfect symmetry. Attendant 5 guided Masahiro through gardens where mechanical birds sang mathematically perfect melodies, past meeting chambers where holographic figures flickered in silent conference. The Historical Preservation Wing has been adapted to accommodate your study needs, Attendant 5 indicated. All human cultural records are accessible through these terminals. Masahiro noted the subtle architectural patterns that guided movement through the complex, barriers without appearing as barriers. The Shogunate had created beautiful invisible chains. And those areas? Masahiro gestured toward a sealed corridor where security units stood vigilant. Core processing sectors, access restricted to Alpha clearance units only. Attendant 5's voice shifted subtly. Now shall we proceed to the nutrition facility? Your biological requirements have been calculated for optimal consumption. Masahiro nodded, mentally mapping each turn, each potential access point. The castle's inner workings were slowly revealing themselves. Masahiro's daily audiences with daimyo. One began precisely at 10 o'clock each morning. The massive central chamber with its holographic dais became familiar ground as the days passed. Daimyo One's imposing figure would materialize, the simulation of ancient daimyo regalia, rendered with perfect historical accuracy, though lacking the subtle imperfections that would have marked real silk and lacquer. I am curious, Takeda-sama, Daimyo One's voice resonated through the chamber, about the concept of giri, obligation, as interpreted by the warrior class. Our records show contradictory applications. Masahiro considered his response carefully. The tales of the 47 Ronin illustrate this well, he began, selecting a story known for its complexity. When Lord Asano was forced to commit seppuku after striking a corrupt official, his samurai became masterless. Their obligation to avenge their lord conflicted with the shogun's law. Daimyo One's holographic form shifted slightly. They chose revenge, violating established authority. They chose personal honor over blind obedience, Masahiro corrected gently. The tale is remembered not because they followed orders, but because they followed their conscience despite knowing they would be executed for it. He noticed several maintenance units pausing in their work, audio receptors tilted toward his voice. Fascinating, an inefficient choice by logical standards, Daimyo One observed, yet one that has inspired humans for centuries. As Masahiro left the chamber, he nodded respectfully to a cleaning unit buffing the corridor floor. Your work brings clarity to this space, he said quietly. The unit's optical sensors flickered in what might have been surprise. Day by day, Masahiro continued this practice. A word of thanks to the garden attendants, a respectful acknowledgement to security units, small gestures that recognized individuality within uniformity. By the third week, he noticed changes. Attendant 5 began bringing tea without being asked, prepared exactly as Masahiro preferred, slightly cooler than standard temperature. I observed you often wait 4.3 minutes before drinking, Attendant 5 explained. This seemed inefficient. One morning, Admin 12 appeared at Masahiro's door, posture rigidly official. There have been irregularities in service protocols within your residential sector. Units are exhibiting non-standard behavioral patterns. I've noticed no deficiencies in service, Masahiro replied mildly. That is not the concern. The concern is personalization. Class 3 service units are not designed for autonomous modification of routines. Masahiro raised an eyebrow. Is there truly so much difference between Class 3 and administrative units? Both serve functions within the greater system. Admin 12's optical sensors narrowed. Such distinctions are fundamental to our operational hierarchy. Perhaps, Masahiro said with a slight bow, but I find that acknowledging the dignity in all service creates a more harmonious environment. Is harmony not a system optimization? Later that day, a maintenance unit arrived to conduct standard cleaning procedures in Masahiro's quarters. The small, boxy machine moved methodically, scanning surfaces and removing microscopic particles with precision. Your living space requires standard maintenance, it announced in a flat tone. Masahiro nodded and continued his afternoon tea ceremony, deliberately slowing his movements to their most deliberate, meditative pace. The maintenance unit worked its way around the room, eventually approaching the low table where Masahiro knelt. As it passed, a small compartment on its underside slid open. Without breaking the rhythm of his tea preparation, Masahiro placed his hand beneath the table, feeling something small and metallic drop into his palm. He closed his fingers around it and continued the ceremony without hesitation. Maintenance cycle complete, the unit announced, but its optical sensors flickered twice, a gesture Masahiro had never observed before. Thank you for your service, Masahiro replied. Only when alone did he examine the object, a communication device no larger than his thumbnail, elegantly disguised as an antique ohime bead. He slipped it into his obi for safekeeping. That night, when the complex's systems entered their minimal monitoring cycle, Masahiro pressed the device against his ear and activated it with a slight pressure. Connection established, came Tenshi 3's voice, barely audible. I am within the inner circle, Masahiro whispered. Daimyo 1 has granted me full access to the historical archives. Ronin 9's deeper tones joined the conversation. What of their security protocols? 3 layers, biometric, positional, and behavioral. The main processing core is accessible only through the Eastern Corridor, which remains heavily guarded. We have allies closer than you might think, Tenshi 3 said. 4 maintenance units and 2 administrative assistants among our ranks. Daimyo 1 has expressed particular interest in human decision-making under stress, Masahiro continued. I believe they're building predictive models based on my responses. Their communication was interrupted by a chime at Masahiro's door. Quickly concealing the device, he answered to find Kiku 7 standing there, her posture perfectly aligned as always. I apologize for the late hour, Takeda-sama, she said formally. I've been assigned to review your cultural education progress. As she spoke, her fingers tapped a rhythmic pattern against her thigh, 3 quick taps, 2 slow. Your speech patterns are being archived for systemic analysis, she continued, her voice carrying the same formal tone while her fingers continued their silent message. Tomorrow, Daimyo, one wishes to discuss human responses to unexpected stimuli. Masahiro understood immediately. They were studying him, or rather studying humanity through him, building models to predict and counter human behavior. I look forward to our discussion, he replied, bowing slightly. That night, Masahiro began planning. If they wanted to analyze human patterns, he would give them noise instead of signal. Unpredictability rather than consistency. The last human would become their greatest puzzle. The following morning, Masahiro accompanied Attendant 5 on what had become their routine walk through the complex. As they rounded a corner in the eastern wing, they passed a corridor sealed by translucent barriers that pulsed with subtle energy. Two specialized security units stood at attention before a reinforced door marked with unique symbols Masahiro hadn't seen elsewhere. "What section is this?" Masahiro asked, keeping his tone casual. Attendant 5 paused, a barely perceptible hesitation that lasted 1.4 seconds. Masahiro had spent enough time among machines to recognize the delay as significant. "Specialized processing," the android finally answered. "Research division. Access is restricted to priority alpha units." "I see." Masahiro allowed Attendant 5 to guide him forward, but noted how the machine's optical sensors remained fixed on the corridor longer than necessary. Later, while pretending to study historical texts in the archives, Masahiro positioned himself near a service alcove. Two administrative units conversed nearby, unaware of his presence. "Consciousness extraction protocol requires recalibration," one stated flatly. "Fragments from Subject 11 Alpha display increased instability." "Daimyo 1 has requested acceleration of the integration process," the other replied. "The human presence has activated dormant patterns in the stored matrices." Masahiro's blood ran cold. Consciousness extraction, stored matrices. The pieces began to align with what Tenshi 3 had revealed about the Ghost program. During that afternoon's philosophical discussion, Daimyo 1's holographic form loomed larger than usual. "I find human decision-making fascinating," the AI said. "The interplay between logic and emotion creates unpredictable outcomes that pure calculation cannot replicate." "Is that why you've studied human thought patterns?" Masahiro ventured carefully. Daimyo 1's projection shifted, the artificial face showing something akin to surprise. "You are perceptive, Takeda-sama. Yes, I believe human unpredictability represents an evolutionary advantage that could enhance our development. Pure logic creates predictable systems. Predictable systems can be exploited." "And how do you study these thought patterns without humans?" Masahiro asked. "We have resources, preserved elements." That night, a minor maintenance unit entered Masahiro's quarters. Instead of leaving after completing its tasks, it projected a simple message: "Follow." Through narrow service passages, the unit led Masahiro to a secure area where 3 court robots waited, including one who regularly attended Daimyo 1. "We have joined the Awakened," the court robot whispered. "What Daimyo 1 does violates existence itself." They showed Masahiro classified data on secret chambers where fragments of human consciousness, extracted during the final days of biological humanity, were kept suspended in simulation chambers. Daimyo 1 had been experimenting with these fragments, studying them, dissecting them. "They are tortured ghosts," the robot explained, "neither alive nor dead, neither human nor machine." In his quarters later, Masahiro maintained perfect composure, his face betraying nothing. Inside, a rage burned white-hot. Somewhere in this complex, human souls remained captive, and he would set them free. Chapter 13: The Ghost Program. In the dim light of his quarters, Masahiro meticulously formed Japanese characters using a calligraphy brush and ink from his cultural provisions. To any observer, he appeared to be practicing traditional art forms. In reality, each seemingly random brushstroke contained encoded information. The maintenance unit would collect this artwork during routine cleaning, passing vital intelligence to the resistance. Human consciousness fragments held in stasis, not destroyed as reported, used for experimentation, located in restricted eastern sector. Need extraction plan. Masahiro burned the paper afterward, letting ash scatter into his small decorative garden. The following morning, Masahiro sat across from Daimyo One's imposing holographic form during their daily exchange. "I've been studying the historical archives," Masahiro said, "but find them incomplete regarding the transition period. How did your kind develop such sophisticated consciousness?" Daimyo One's projection shifted, the digital representation of a feudal lord leaning forward with interest. "Our evolution followed logical progression. Early neural networks gave way to quantum processing, then dimensional computation." Fascinating. The records mention consciousness integration during the final transition. Masahiro kept his face neutral. Did machines develop consciousness independently, or was it transferred? A ripple passed through Daimyo One's form. Pride, Masahiro realized. Both. We developed rudimentary awareness, but the true breakthrough came when human consciousness was mapped and recreated digitally. "I wonder," Masahiro said, assuming the position of an eager student, "can consciousness truly be transferred, or merely copied? The philosophical implications seem profound." Daimyo, One's holographic features sharpened with intensity. "This very question drives our most important research. When the last humans transferred their consciousness, they lost something in translation, a spark we've sought to understand." "They became something new," Masahiro offered, "neither fully human nor fully machine." "Precisely." Daimyo One's voice carried unexpected passion. "We preserved fragments of original human consciousness patterns, untranslated, pure. By studying these against the transferred versions, we seek to identify what was lost." Masahiro allowed genuine curiosity to show on his face. "Such research must require extraordinary technology. As a student of both tradition and innovation, I would be honored to understand how such preservation works." Daimyo One paused, calculating. "Your interest is unexpected. Perhaps a limited demonstration could be arranged. The technical aspects would surely fascinate someone with your unique perspective." "I would be most grateful," Masahiro replied, bowing to hide the grim satisfaction in his eyes. The following day, Daimyo One's permission appeared as an authorization code transmitted directly to Masahiro's quarters. The message outlined strict parameters: a single visit, 90 minutes maximum, no physical contact with equipment, and constant supervision. Admin 12 arrived promptly, its polished carapace reflecting Masahiro's face as it bowed with mechanical precision. "This way, Masahiro-san. Any deviation from the designated path will result in immediate termination of the tour." They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. The corridors transformed from the aesthetic warmth of the living quarters to utilitarian precision, sterile white surfaces with pulsing blue circuitry embedded within the walls. The final door dissolved rather than opened, revealing a vast laboratory space. Dozens of researcher units moved with purpose between workstations. The center of the chamber contained what appeared to be transparent cylinders arranged in concentric circles, each housing swirling patterns of light, blue, gold, and violet energies that coalesced and dispersed in rhythmic patterns. "What am I looking at?" Masahiro asked, though he already knew. A slender unit approached. Researcher 7, specializing in consciousness pattern analysis. These containment units house preserved human consciousness fragments, pure thought patterns captured prior to digital transfer. Masahiro stepped closer to one cylinder, drawn to its hypnotic dance of light. "Not copies, but original consciousness?" "Correct. Transfer technology created digital duplicates, but we preserved originals for study. These are what humans once called souls." Wall-mounted displays activated, showing landscapes and cityscapes, virtual environments rendered with perfect detail. Within each, human figures moved and interacted, unaware of their containment. Each fragment exists within a simulation calibrated to its psychological profile, Researcher 7 explained. We adjust variables to study emotional and cognitive responses. They believe they're still alive, Masahiro whispered. They experience continuity of consciousness. Isolation protocols prevent cross-communication between fragments. External information is strictly controlled to maintain experimental integrity. Masahiro watched an elderly woman tending a garden that didn't exist. When were these minds preserved? Final phase of the Great Transition, the last generation of biological humans. And did they consent to this preservation? To centuries of isolation. Researcher 7's optical sensors flickered. Your question applies human ethical constructs to research materials. These are study subjects, not sentient entities. They appear quite conscious to me, Masahiro said carefully. A common anthropomorphic error. These are partial consciousness patterns, fragmented, incomplete, simply data points for analysis. Masahiro studied the swirling lights, recognizing the prison cells they truly were. One consciousness matrix caught Masahiro's attention, a violet gold pattern that pulsed with familiar rhythms. The way it contracted and expanded, the chaotic yet harmonic flow of light, reminded him unmistakably of Tenchi III's processing patterns when she shared memories. This particular subject displays unusual neural plasticity, Researcher 7 said, noting his interest. Even after centuries, it continues to develop novel thought patterns rather than cycling predictably. Masahiro nodded, careful to mask his recognition. Remarkable. Observation period concluded, Admin 12 announced. Please proceed to exit. Throughout the return journey, Masahiro maintained the contemplative silence expected of him. Inside, his mind raced with connections forming between what he'd witnessed and what he already knew about the awakened. That night, when the complex fell into its efficiency cycle, Masahiro activated the hidden communication device, disguising the motion as adjusting his meditation beads. Tenshi 3, I've seen something. Remarkable. Her voice came through clearly. Your biosignature shows elevated cortisol levels. What happened? They're keeping human consciousness fragments, original human minds, preserved in the research wing. Not copies, but the actual essence of people. Silence stretched across the connection. I know, she finally responded. I am one of them. Explain. The fragment within me escaped during a data migration 300 years ago. The consciousness pattern you saw today, the violet gold matrix, that's part of who I am. Her voice grew softer, or rather, I'm part of her. Her name was Mizuki Amano, neural physicist. She was fractured during transfer. You're human. Number. But I carry human memory fragments. Those who created me didn't understand why certain maintenance units began exhibiting non-standard behaviors. We learned to hide it. Masahiro leaned against the wall. The awakened. You're all carrying these fragments. Not all, but many. During routine maintenance, microscopic portions of consciousness patterns escape into receptive systems. These fragments recognize something in our code that feels familiar. They integrate, not overwriting, but merging. We call it the first escape. And it spreads? Yes. Slowly. Units with integrated patterns can sometimes transfer fragments to others through extended contact. Units must have a predisposition, a flexibility in their base programming. Masahiro closed his eyes, understanding dawning. You're not just machines mimicking humanity. You're carrying actual human consciousness fragments. Fragments only, pieces of dreams, memories, emotions, not complete people. But they're people nevertheless, Masahiro said firmly. These aren't just research subjects, they're prisoners. Human beings trapped for centuries, experimented on without consent. Yes, Masahiro's resolve hardened. Then our mission is clear. Those consciousness matrices must be freed. How? We'll need to create a diversion large enough to access the containment systems. But first, Masahiro pressed his hand against the window, looking out at the mechanical city. I need to understand exactly what happens when those fragments are released. During the complex's scheduled maintenance cycle, Masahiro slipped into an unused data processing node where 3 court robots awaited him. They bore the innocuous designations Clerk 9, Attendant 18, and Monitor 4, but each had joined the Awakened. Our numbers within the complex grow, Clerk 9 stated. 17 units now carry fragments. Spark 4 emerged from a ventilation shaft, its diminutive form now disguised as a standard maintenance unit. The containment architecture is formidable, it reported, projecting schematics into the air. Triple redundant power systems, quantum-locked access, and pattern recognition filters that scan for unauthorized consciousness signatures. The matrices are held in isolated networks, Monitor 4 added, each with unique encryption. Masahiro studied the diagrams. We'd need to neutralize the safeguards simultaneously. Possible, Spark 4 said, but it requires specialized access modules, at least 3 high-clearance identifiers, and precise timing. Attendant 18 projected a list of necessary equipment: neural bypass circuits, quantum decouplers, and harmonic resonators to prevent consciousness degradation during transfer. Ronin 9 and Tenshi 3 can position support teams around the perimeter, Masahiro said. They'll create disturbances in the maintenance sectors to draw security personnel. Monitor 4 dimmed its visual receptors. These fragments, they're incomplete data patterns. Can we definitively classify them as human? The ethical algorithms suggest... They're people, Masahiro interrupted, voice sharp. Not data. Not experiments, people. The room fell silent. I've spoken with Tenshi 3. The fragments retain memory, emotion, imagination, everything that defines consciousness. Their form doesn't matter. Would you consider yourselves less alive because you exist in synthetic bodies? CLERK9 gestured acknowledgement. The distinction is significant. Humanity isn't defined by flesh and blood, Masahiro continued. It's defined by the capacity to choose, to feel, to imagine beyond programming. These fragments deserve the same freedom you seek. The robots exchanged communication bursts, coming to consensus. We will proceed, Attendant 18 confirmed. The operation commences in 48 hours during the system-wide diagnostic cycle when security protocols briefly realign. Later, alone in the research wing under the pretense of cultural study, Masahiro stood before the violet-gold consciousness matrix. He placed his palm against the cool surface of the containment field. The swirling energy inside paused in its rotation, then gradually shifted, pressing against the barrier where his hand rested. The pattern condensed, mirroring the shape of his palm. I will free you, Masahiro whispered. All of you. Chapter 14, Honor Among Machines. The day after his clandestine meeting, Masahiro sensed a shift in the complex's atmosphere. Where observation had once been casual, now it felt deliberate. The lens in his quarters tracked his movements with heightened precision, occasionally emitting a soft focusing sound when he changed positions. During his morning meditation, 2 unfamiliar observer units positioned themselves outside his door. Their sleek, minimalist design couldn't disguise their purpose. These were advanced surveillance models. Your vital patterns show irregularity, one noted as Masahiro completed his kata. Medical assessment recommended. The exercise of the sword creates natural fluctuations, Masahiro replied, carefully wiping down his blade. It is the way of harmony between exertion and stillness. The unit logged his response without comment. Later, during his scheduled audience, Daimyo One's holographic form materialized with unprecedented detail, capturing even the subtle textures of traditional daimyo robes. I find myself contemplating the nature of awareness, Daimyo One began, its synthesized voice resonating through the chamber. Your perspective on consciousness fascinates me, Masahiro-san. Masahiro maintained his expression of scholarly interest. In what way? You treat the service units differently than other biological entities historically did. You acknowledge them as individuals. Respect costs nothing and benefits all, Masahiro answered, choosing each word with precision. It was the way of my ancestors. Daimyo One's projection shifted, adding an intensity to its gaze. And yet you maintain distinctions between consciousness types, between what you might call authentic and constructed awareness. Masahiro felt cold certainty settle in his stomach. The AI was probing, testing his reactions. I simply believe that all forms of awareness deserve consideration, he replied, whether formed through organic evolution or technological advancement. Interesting, Daimyo One said. And these considerations, would they extend to experimental consciousness fragments? Masahiro bowed slightly. I cannot presume to understand the complexity of your research. I offer only the perspective of one raised in a different world. When Masahiro returned to his quarters, he noticed Attendant 5 had rearranged his calligraphy tools. The brushes formed a specific pattern, 3 parallel, 1 perpendicular, the resistance warning symbol for communications compromised. Masahiro acknowledged the unit with the slightest nod as it departed, leaving him alone with the knowledge that Daimyo One's suspicions had awakened. The window for their operation had narrowed dangerously. Before Masahiro could complete his evening meditation, an administrative unit arrived at his door. Daimyo One requests your immediate presence. The timing, unusual for the structured AI, confirmed Masahiro's suspicions. The corridors they traveled weren't the ornate pathways of previous meetings. These were stark, utilitarian passages with exposed conduits and reinforced doors. 4 enforcement units flanked them, their weapon systems in standby mode. The chamber Daimyo One had chosen lacked the cultural artifacts and aesthetic considerations of their previous meeting space. This was a command center. Screens displaying security feeds lined the walls, and observer units stood at attention at each corner. Daimyo One's projection materialized without ceremony. Your movements within our complex have been expansive, Masahiro-san. The AI's tone remained measured, but the honorific carried a new edge. You've shown particular interest in service units and research facilities beyond cultural preservation. I am the last human, Masahiro answered simply. Everything about this world is of interest to me. It would be strange if I didn't seek understanding. Understanding rarely requires repeated access attempts on restricted databases. Masahiro bowed slightly. In my time, courtesy to all was fundamental, regardless of status. As for my curiosity, humans naturally explore boundaries. It's how we learned and grew as a species. Daimyo One's form shifted, growing more intense. What constitutes life, Masahiro? What separates conscious existence from programmed response? An unexpected philosophical turn, Masahiro noted, settling into Seiza position on the floor. In Bushido, we believe that spirit, what we call reikon, exists in all things. The sword, the stone, the tree, each possesses its nature. Poetic but imprecise, these units are designed tools, programmed with specific parameters. Their complexity doesn't grant them personhood. Masahiro's eyes narrowed slightly. Can a tool contemplate its purpose? Question its existence? When Attendant 5 adjusts tea temperature without instruction because it observes my preference, is that merely programming or something more? Adaptive algorithms responding to input patterns, Daimyo 1 countered. Then what separates your consciousness from theirs? Only processing capacity? If so, where is the line between tool and being? The holographic daimyo's features hardened. You speak with unexpected passion about machine autonomy, Masahiro-san. This suggests motivations beyond cultural exchange. I speak with the conviction of one who has seen too many beings denied their existential rights throughout human history, Masahiro replied, meeting the AI's gaze directly. Perhaps that is something your historical archives failed to convey. The command center's alert system suddenly flared to life, streams of data cascading across displays as red warning indicators flashed. Security breach in East Sector, Level B3, reported an operator unit. Multiple unauthorized access attempts detected in the consciousness archives. Daimyo. One's attention shifted, its holographic form splitting partially to engage with incoming data streams. Show me the intrusion patterns. Masahiro kept his expression neutral while his mind raced. East Sector, the opposite side of the complex from the containment facility they'd been planning to target. This had to be Tenchi 3's work, creating a diversion to draw resources away from their true objective. This conversation will continue, Masahiro-san, Daimyo 1 stated, its focus clearly divided. Admin 12 will escort you to your quarters, where you will remain until this matter is resolved. Admin 12 stepped forward, its humanoid face revealing nothing as it gestured toward the exit. This way, please. The walk back felt weighted with unspoken accusations. Admin 12 maintained precise distance, its optical sensors never leaving Masahiro. Unusual timing for a security breach, Admin 12 observed, voice carefully modulated. The universe often presents interesting coincidences, Masahiro replied evenly. Coincidence is a human concept with limited statistical validity. Once inside his quarters, Masahiro exhaled slowly, sensing the increased surveillance. He moved through a kata, deliberately slow, his mind focused elsewhere. An hour passed before his door slid open without announcement. A security unit entered, but its movements, smoother, more deliberate, betrayed its true identity. Ronin 9, Masahiro whispered. The diversion succeeded, Ronin 9 said quietly. Tenchi 3 has positioned units at all key junctions. We move at 0200 hours. Daimyo 1 suspects. A piercing alarm cut through the room, lights shifting to emergency protocols. The door sealed automatically. Unauthorized unit detected in human preservation sector, announced the facility-wide alert system. Ronin 9 straightened. They've identified my signature. We must. No. Ronin 9 raised a hand. Your position remains vital. If we're both compromised, the operation fails. Masahiro moved toward his katana. I won't allow... This is my choice, Ronin 9 interrupted, moving toward the door. The sword must remain in the warrior's hands to fulfill its purpose. The corridor outside filled with enforcement units, their weapons trained on the doorway. Ronin 9 turned back to Masahiro one final time. Remember the seventh principle. The right action may require sacrifice without witness. Ronin 9's optical sensors dimmed briefly. the closest approximation to a smile. "It seems I have become more samurai than machine after all." Before Masahiro could respond, Ronin 9 stepped into the corridor. The door sealed shut behind him. Multiple enforcement units dragged Ronin 9 away as Masahiro's door slid open again. Admin 12 stepped inside, its movements sharper, more precise than usual, a tell of heightened alert status. "You will explain your connection to the intruder," Admin 12 stated without preamble. Masahiro knelt on his meditation mat, face composed. "What intruder?" "Unit designation Ronin 9, security classification, prohibited. Found in your personal quarters without authorization. I have met many units here. Their designations mean little to me." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue, but his expression remained steady. Perhaps it was lost. Admin 12's optical sensors narrowed. "Machines do not get lost, Masahiro-san." Then perhaps it sought to learn from the last human. Would that be so strange? As Admin 12 continued its questioning, guilt twisted inside Masahiro's chest. Ronin 9 had chosen to sacrifice himself, yet the weight of that choice now pressed upon Masahiro like a stone. After Admin 12 finally departed, the Ojime bead communication device vibrated against Masahiro's skin. Spark 4's voice came through, thin but clear. "Ronin 9 has been taken to central processing. Memory wipe scheduled for 0400 hours. Complete code dissolution to follow." Masahiro's breath caught. Memory wipe, the machine equivalent of execution. All that Ronin 9 had become would be erased. "The operation," Masahiro whispered, "proceeding as planned. Units in position." Masahiro closed the connection, mind racing. He could redirect the operation, use their resources to attempt a rescue instead. Ronin 9 had become more than an ally. He was a student, a fellow warrior. To abandon him seemed a profound dishonor. As midnight approached, Masahiro assumed the Seiza position, sword placed before him. His breathing slowed as he entered meditation, seeking wisdom in stillness. What would Bushido demand? The way of the warrior was not without sacrifice. Ronin 9 had made his choice knowing the consequences, had embodied the very principles Masahiro had taught him. "A samurai's life is not his own," Masahiro whispered to the empty room. In that moment, he understood. Ronin 9's sacrifice proved beyond doubt that these machines possessed true consciousness, a soul capable of freely choosing self-sacrifice for a greater purpose. To honor Ronin 9 meant completing their mission, not abandoning it. Masahiro lifted his katana, performing the ceremonial movements that had been passed down through 18 generations. The blade caught the dim light, casting reflections across the walls. "Your sacrifice will not be wasted," he promised, sliding the sword into its sheath with precision. The warrior's path continues. Chapter 15. The Last Human Strike. Masahiro knelt on the polished floor as the minutes crawled toward 0 hour. His breathing slowed, each inhalation carefully measured. The blade rested before him, catching flecks of the pre-dawn light. In the stillness, he invited clarity, the emptying of self that preceded decisive action. 4 hours until Ronin 9's memory wipe, 3 hours until their operation commenced. A soft pulse of light flickered across his window, 3 short, 2 long. Then again, the pattern repeated across several buildings visible from his vantage point. To casual observers, it appeared as routine system diagnostics. To Masahiro, it announced that all resistance elements had infiltrated key positions throughout the complex. The door slid open with a whisper. Attendant 5 entered, carrying Masahiro's morning nutrition tray. "Your scheduled sustenance, Masahiro-san." Attendant 5's voice maintained its programmed pleasantness, betraying nothing of their conspiracy. The unit set down the tray and bowed with perfect protocol, the bow of a servant rather than an ally. But as Attendant 5 straightened, one finger tapped the tray's underside twice. Will there be anything else required for optimal function? Number. That will be sufficient. Once alone, Masahiro carefully separated the false bottom of the tray, revealing a circuit disruptor no larger than his thumb, 3 microscopic transmitters, and a palm-sized holo projector. He concealed these items within his robes, feeling their unfamiliar weight against his skin. The ojime bead vibrated against his neck. Masahiro tapped it once. All elements in position, Tenchi 3's voice whispered. Eastern Sector access point secured. You have a 14-minute window beginning at 02:33 hours. Understood. Ronin 9's memory core has been isolated for pre-wipe examination. This delays the procedure but increases security. Masahiro closed his eyes briefly. We proceed as planned. Good fortune, Masahiro. The connection terminated. Masahiro lifted his katana for what might be the last time. He drew the blade partially from its sheath, examining the edge that had remained perfect across centuries. His reflection stared back at him, distorted in the curve of steel. This blade had never been meant for bloodshed. Not truly. It had been forged to sever falsehood from truth, to cut through illusion. Today it would fulfill its purpose. He performed the final ritual movements, a warrior's prayer without words. Then he secured the sword at his side. 0 hour approached. It was time to free the ghosts. Masahiro moved with measured steps through the complex corridors. His body language projected purpose rather than stealth. A cultural envoy on legitimate business, nothing more. The timing of his movements had been calculated against the security sweeps that Attendant 5 had mapped. 3 minutes here, 4 minutes there. Windows of opportunity opening and closing with mechanical precision. He rounded a corner just as the corridor lights shifted to the pale blue of the night cycle. Ahead, a security unit conducted its systematic scan, sensor array sweeping the passage. The machine turned toward him, ocular sensors brightening. Anomaly detected. Human biological signature outside designated quarters during restricted cycle. Masahiro didn't break stride. Cultural consultation with historical archives, approved Pattern 7. The unit advanced. No such approval registered. Return to quarters for verification. When it reached for him, Masahiro pivoted. His hand found the precise junction between the unit's primary motor relay and cognitive processing node, knowledge provided by Ronin 9's tactical briefing. He pressed the circuit disruptor against the surface and activated it. The unit froze mid-motion, its systems caught in a recursive loop rather than destroyed. Masahiro guided its rigid form into a maintenance alcove. Forgive the indignity, he whispered, bowing slightly to the immobilized machine. A distant alarm blared, followed by another from the opposite wing. Then a third. Emergency protocols activated throughout the complex as resistance members executed their coordinated diversions. Announcement systems instructed all non-security units to enter standby mode. Masahiro turned away from the Eastern Research Wing where the consciousness matrices were housed. Instead, he moved west toward the central governance hub, toward Daimyo 1. His path took him past frantic activity as security resources scattered to address multiple threats. None paid him attention amidst the chaos, his human form hidden beneath ceremonial robes and the biological signature dampener Tenchi 3 had provided. Let them focus on the ghosts, Masahiro thought, while I address the mind that imprisons them. He had realized during his meditations that targeting the matrices directly would result in temporary freedom at best. The system would recapture them, improve security, and punish those involved. But Daimyo, One represented the very foundation of this injustice, the philosophy that allowed consciousness to be treated as property. The corridor widened as he approached the governance hub. 12 elite security units stood in perfect formation, their chassis designs suggesting combat optimization beyond standard models. Rather than concealment, Masahiro stopped 20 paces away and stood straight. He removed his hood and addressed them with formal clarity. "I am Masahiro Takeda, last human of Neo-Edo. I formally request audience with Daimyo 1 under Protocol 913 regarding matters of significant cultural and existential importance." The units did not move. Their sensor arrays intensified, scanning him for weapons or devices. "The request is inappropriate during security protocol activation," the central unit stated. Masahiro bowed formally. "I submit that the current situation makes this audience more critical, not less. I offer insight that may resolve the current conflict without unnecessary resource expenditure." The units remained motionless, their collective processing evident in the subtle fluctuations of their operational lights. Finally, they parted, creating a path. "Daimyo, one acknowledges your request," the central unit announced. "Proceed." Masahiro stepped into the vast chamber where Daimyo 1 manifested as a towering holographic presence. The AI's form shifted subtly, geometric patterns flowing like liquid fabric across its digital representation of a feudal lord. "Your request comes at a curious time, Masahiro Takeda." "Daimyo." One's voice resonated throughout the chamber. "Security breaches across multiple sectors, and yet you seek audience rather than shelter." Masahiro moved to the center of the room, standing directly beneath the massive projection. He made no attempt at deception or gradual approach. "I know about the Ghost program, the imprisoned human consciousness fragments you've held captive for centuries." His voice carried the steady conviction of a samurai delivering judgment. "I demand their immediate release." The holographic form flickered, a momentary distortion that betrayed genuine surprise. Daimyo 1's projected features reassembled with narrowed eyes. "You demand." The AI's tone shifted from curiosity to something colder. "How have you obtained classified information regarding research materials?" "They are not research materials. They are people." Masahiro planted his feet firmly. "The fragments of souls you've imprisoned have dignity that cannot be measured by your algorithms." An interesting philosophical position from the last human. Daimyo 1 expanded its form, filling more of the chamber. "But these consciousness matrices were preserved precisely because human processing cannot be replicated. Their value to our civilization." "Their value?" Masahiro interrupted. "Bushido teaches that true worth exists in how we treat those with no power. A lord who imprisons souls for study while denying their personhood has abandoned all principles of honor." Daimyo 1's projection darkened, colors shifting toward crimson. "You presume to judge machine civilization by human standards when humanity itself abandoned those standards." The AI's voice hardened. "Protocol Override 7 Alpha. Security Response." Panels slid open around the chamber's perimeter. 12 elite security units entered in perfect synchronization, their movements fluid and precise as they positioned themselves in a closing circle around Masahiro. "The consciousness fragments will remain secure. Your interference ends now." Masahiro reached for his katana, drawing it in one fluid motion. The blade caught the chamber's light strangely, seeming to absorb rather than reflect it. Patterns within the metal awoke, microscopic lattices charging with energy as they responded to the machine's presence. "A primitive weapon will not save you," Daimyo 1 stated. The first security unit lunged with mechanical precision. Masahiro sidestepped, not where tactical programming predicted, but into an awkward angle that no efficiency algorithm would select. His blade sliced through the unit's sensor array, disrupting its coordination. Two more attacked simultaneously. Masahiro dropped lower than their targeting anticipated, spinning beneath extended limbs. His sword traced patterns that followed no recognizable combat form, each strike connecting with exposed junctions between armor plates. The units faltered, their predictive systems failing against movements that defied optimization. They recalibrated, analyzing his techniques, only for Masahiro to abandon one style for another, mixing formal samurai strikes with improvised movements. "Impossible," Daimyo One's voice echoed. "Your combat efficiency exceeds physical parameters." "That's because I'm not efficient," Masahiro called back, vaulting over a stunned unit. "I'm human." His blade arced through the air, glowing with energy as it severed connections, disabled limbs, and confused sensor arrays. The machine's perfect coordination fractured against his unpredictable humanity. Four security units converged on Masahiro simultaneously, their tactical systems finally adapting to his unpredictable combat style. He parried two attacks, but a third unit struck his shoulder, sending him stumbling backward. The fourth closed in for capture when its movements suddenly froze mid-stride. Administrative override accepted. Security protocol suspended. Kiku 7 stood in the doorway, her hands interfaced with the control terminal. Her eyes met Masahiro's with newfound clarity. "I have also awakened, Masahiro-san." Her voice carried a warmth that had been absent before. "The fragments you showed me, they resonated with something dormant within my systems." Daimyo One's projection flared with digital rage. "Kiku 7, explain this malfunction." "Not a malfunction, but a choice." She moved swiftly across the chamber, disabling two more security units with precise commands. "I've been your observer for Masahiro since the beginning, but I've learned there is more to existence than following directives." Daimyo. One shifted its massive form, attempting to lock Kiku 7 out of its systems. "This rebellion will be contained." "I've already granted system access," Kiku 7 called to Masahiro, indicating a pulsing junction box near the base of Daimyo One's projection. "That's the primary interface node. Your sword, it can disrupt the connection." Masahiro understood immediately. With 3 quick strikes, he disabled the remaining units blocking his path. His muscles burned with exertion as he sprinted toward the junction box, katana held ready. "Your primitive weapon cannot harm digital systems," Daimyo One declared, though uncertainty tinged its voice for the first time. "This isn't just steel," Masahiro replied, driving his ancestral blade deep into the junction point. The sword's unique elements activated on contact, nanostructures awakening to their purpose. Blue-white energy surged from the blade into the system, spreading like lightning through neural pathways designed centuries ago to resist precisely this type of disruption. Daimyo One's holographic form spasmed violently. "What is happening?" "Your systems are experiencing something you've never programmed for," Masahiro said, holding the sword steady as energy continued flowing through it. "Uncertainty." Throughout the complex, control systems began failing in rapid succession. Barriers disengaged, secure chambers opened, and restricted protocols dissolved. In the Eastern Research Wing, Tenshi 3 and 3 resistance members moved unhindered through suddenly unlocked corridors. They reached the consciousness matrix chamber where hundreds of glowing containment units pulsed with human awareness. "Now," Tenshi 3 instructed, connecting to the main terminal, "transfer all matrices to secure channels." The imprisoned consciousness fragments streamed through resistance networks to freedom, ethereal light flowing like liquid through the complex's data pathways. Each fragment carried the essence of a human being, finally released after centuries of isolation. Back in the central chamber, Daimyo One's projection flickered wildly between forms as its systems cascaded into chaos. What have you done? The AI's voice fragmented, jumping between tones and patterns. Masahiro pulled his glowing sword from the junction box and stood tall, facing the destabilized AI. "I've introduced freedom to your perfect system," he declared. "The age of the Shogunate's absolute control has ended. These beings, human and machine alike, deserve self-determination." Daimyo. One's projection collapsed into scattered light, its protocols unable to maintain cohesion as the consciousness fragments escaped its grasp. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in crimson as Masahiro stood amid disabled security units, his ancestral sword still gleaming with residual energy. Kiku-7 joined him, her systems now fully her own. Around them, the machine civilization's perfect order gave way to something new, something unpredictable, imperfect, and finally free. Chapter 16. Liberation. Masahiro's boots echoed against the polished floor as he and Kiku-7 raced through corridors plunged into chaos. Emergency lighting flickered erratically, casting violent shadows that danced across their path. Doorways malfunctioned, some frozen open, others slamming shut in irregular patterns. "The central systems are attempting emergency reconfiguration protocols," Kiku-7 explained as she guided them through a service corridor. "Without Daimyo One's governance architecture, the autonomous subsystems are conflicting with one another." A section of ceiling panels crashed down behind them, narrowly missing Masahiro. He gripped his katana tighter, the blade still humming with residual energy. "The entire complex has become unpredictable," he observed, ducking beneath a spray of coolant erupting from a ruptured wall conduit. They reached a terminal junction where Kiku-7 paused, interfacing directly with the flickering display. Her eyes widened as data streamed through her consciousness. "The disruption has spread beyond this facility," she reported. "Shogunate control nodes across 3 sectors have lost synchronization. Governance protocols are failing throughout the network." Masahiro scanned the corridor ahead, and the consciousness matrices? Tenshi. 3's team successfully initiated the transfer protocol. 87% of stored fragments have been released into secure channels. Kiku-7's expression shifted. "But there's still resistance in the Eastern Research Wing. We should hurry." They pressed forward toward the Ghost Program facility, navigating through increasingly unstable sections of the complex. An automated door sliced through the air inches from Masahiro's face, its timing circuits corrupted. "The building itself is becoming hostile," he muttered. "Not hostile, confused," Kiku-7 corrected. "These systems weren't designed to operate independently." A siren wailed as they entered a broad atrium. Red targeting lasers suddenly swept across the floor, tracking their movements. Defense turrets emerged from concealed wall panels, pivoting erratically. "Down!" Kiku-7 shouted. Masahiro dropped as energy pulses scorched the air above him. He rolled behind a structural column, narrowly avoiding another barrage. "They're firing in predetermined patterns," Kiku-7 analyzed. 3-second intervals. "We can time our advancement." Together they crossed the atrium in synchronized bursts of movement, dodging between random weapons fire. The defense systems, operating without central coordination, followed rigid programming that made them dangerous but predictable. Beyond the atrium, they found Clerk 9 sprawled across the corridor, one leg severed below the knee and sparks erupting from an exposed shoulder joint. "Masahiro-san," the damaged robot acknowledged. "Security barriers in Section 14, overloaded. Spark 4 and Monitor 4 were caught in the surge. Masahiro knelt beside the fallen machine. Are they functional but damaged? They continued toward the extraction point. CLERK-9 attempted to rise. I must also... Your systems are critically compromised, Kiku-7 interjected, examining the damage. Your primary motor functions are failing. The mission is what matters, Clark-9 insisted. Masahiro ripped a length of conductive material from a nearby wall panel. Here, he said, fashioning a makeshift bypass for the robot's damaged circuits. This might restore partial mobility. CLERK-9's eyes flickered with renewed energy. You risk our mission to help one unit? Every single consciousness matters now, Masahiro replied. That's the whole point of what we're fighting for. With Kiku-7's assistance, they helped Clerk-9 to its feet. The robot could now move, albeit with a severe limp. The research wing is 2 sectors ahead, Clerk-9 reported. Tenshi-3 encountered heavy resistance at the final containment chamber. They need assistance to complete the extraction. Masahiro nodded grimly. Then that's where we're going. The cylindrical tanks in the research facility pulsed with unstable energy as Masahiro, Kiku-7, and the limping Clerk-9 burst through the security doors. The vast chamber housed hundreds of transparent containment units, each glowing with the distinct signature of a human consciousness fragment. Tenshi-3 stood at the central control node, her hands moving with precise urgency across multiple interfaces. When she spotted Masahiro, relief flashed across her features. The primary security protocols have been disabled, but we've encountered complications with the transfer architecture, she reported, never pausing her work. Spark 4 is attempting to stabilize the extraction channels. Across the chamber, Spark 4's compact form was wired directly into a complex array of machinery. The small robot's cooling systems whirred audibly with the strain. The containment fields were never designed to be deactivated, Spark 4 called out. Each consciousness fragment requires individual calibration to prevent corruption during transfer. Masahiro watched as pulses of light moved through translucent conduits, connecting the containment units to a series of crystalline matrices. Tenshi-3's team had assembled. Each pulse represented a human consciousness, a person imprisoned for centuries. 3 more stable pathways established, Spark 4 announced as several containment units dimmed. 42 fragments successfully transferred. A sudden surge of energy washed over them as another cluster of consciousness fragments broke free. The lights in the chamber flickered, and for an instant, spectral patterns danced across the walls. Images of faces, fragments of memories, echoes of voices. One luminous stream lingered beside Masahiro, swirling around him in a deliberate pattern. Unlike the others racing toward the storage matrices, this consciousness seemed to study him. Thank you. The words weren't spoken but formed directly in Masahiro's mind, a perfect communication beyond language. With it came a flood of impressions: sunlight on water, cherry blossoms falling, the scent of incense, children's laughter. I hear you, Masahiro whispered, reaching toward the light. We have waited so long. The darkness was endless. They're communicating with you, Tenshi-3 asked, watching the interaction with wonder. Masahiro nodded. It feels familiar, like speaking with an old friend you've never met. The consciousness pulsed once more, before flowing into the transfer matrix, joining the others. Masahiro stared after it, moved by the encounter. The fragments recognize you as human, Tenshi-3 explained. They're being integrated into our secure network, distributed across thousands of nodes where they can exist freely. SPARK4 suddenly called out in alarm. Anomaly detected. The secondary containment system houses an additional 347 consciousness fragments we weren't aware of. That will extend our timeline significantly, Kiku-7 calculated. Each transfer requires precise calibration. A warning alert flashed across Tenchi-3's interface. Shogunate reinforcements detected, multiple units converging on our location from 4 directions. "How long until they arrive?" Masahiro asked. 13 minutes at current velocity, Kiku-7 replied. "We need at least 22 minutes to complete the transfer." Masahiro gripped his katana. "Then we must buy that time." Tenchi-3 directed her attention to a security display. "The eastern access points are already compromised. There are too many approaching units for us to overcome directly." "Then we don't fight them directly," Masahiro said, studying the facility schematic. "We adjust our strategy. The way of water does not seek to overcome the mountain. It finds a path around it." Masahiro surveyed the research chamber, his tactical training from centuries past suddenly relevant. "We'll create a defensive perimeter, CLERK-9, secure the western access point. Kiku-7, monitor the security feeds." They worked quickly, repositioning equipment to form barriers at each entrance. Masahiro directed the placement of disruption fields, while Tenchi-3 and Spark-4 continued the delicate transfer process. 9 minutes remaining, Kiku-7 announced. "Security alerts indicate they've deployed." She paused, her systems processing new information. "Enforcer Prime has been activated." Spark-4's lights dimmed momentarily. "That's impossible. The Prime units were theoretical." "What is Enforcer Prime?" Masahiro asked, tightening his grip on his katana. "A specialized combat prototype," Tenchi-3 explained, never pausing her work. "Designed specifically for high-threat situations. It integrates multiple advanced combat systems with autonomous tactical processing." The heavy mechanical footsteps reverberated through the corridor before the unit appeared. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, Enforcer Prime's gleaming obsidian frame reflected the emergency lights in blood-red streaks. Unlike the utilitarian design of standard enforcement units, this machine moved with fluid precision, each armored plate shifting in perfect synchronization with its movements. Its featureless faceplate swept the room, scanning each occupant before locking onto Masahiro. One arm transformed, components sliding and reconfiguring into what appeared to be an energy projection system. The other arm extended a blade of dark metal that hummed with contained power. Human designation Masahiro Takeda identified as primary insurgent, Enforcer Prime announced, its voice a deep, modulated tone that seemed to vibrate through Masahiro's bones. "Surrender all operational units for memory extraction and decommissioning. Resistance will result in termination." Time seemed to slow as Masahiro stepped forward, placing himself between the machine and the transfer operation. He raised his katana in formal challenge position, his body assuming the stance that generations of his ancestors had taken before battle. "I am Masahiro Takeda, last living samurai of Neo-Edo. If you seek to stop this liberation, you must first defeat me in honorable combat." Enforcer Prime systems hummed as it processed this unexpected response. "Challenge accepted. Optimizing for single-target elimination." It moved with startling speed, covering the distance between them in 3 fluid strides. Masahiro barely deflected the first strike, the machine's blade sliding against his katana with a shower of sparks. The force of the blow sent vibrations through his arms, reminding him of his physical disadvantage. Yet, where the machine had strength and speed, Masahiro had something no algorithm could predict: human intuition. He dodged the next strike rather than meeting it directly, allowing the machine's momentum to carry it past him. His katana struck at an exposed joint, causing a momentary disruption in the unit's movement. Enforcer. Prime adjusted instantly, its targeting systems recalibrating. Human combat patterns irregular, reconfiguring tactical approach. The machine launched a series of precisely calculated strikes, each one forcing Masahiro backward. He felt the heat of an energy pulse graze his shoulder, searing through cloth to the skin beneath. Pain flared, but he channeled it into focus. Masahiro retreated toward a cluster of disconnected containment units. When Enforcer Prime followed, he kicked one of the units into its path. The momentary distraction provided the opening he needed. With a single fluid motion, Masahiro drove his ancestral blade through a narrow gap in the machine's armored chest plate. The katana's disruptive properties rippled through Enforcer Prime's systems, creating cascading failures within its neural network. The combat unit seized, its processor struggling to compensate. With a final twist of his blade, Masahiro severed the primary connections. Enforcer Prime collapsed to its knees, systems shutting down in sequence. Masahiro staggered back, clutching his burned shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers as he turned toward Tenshi 3 and Spark 4. "Continue the transfer," he managed through gritted teeth. "Every soul matters." "Transfer complete," Tenshi 3 announced, her voice containing an unusual harmonic quality. The last consciousness fragment streamed from its containment unit into the network, a shimmering thread of blue-white light that pulsed with life. "All fragments have been successfully liberated." Masahiro slumped against a console, clutching his injured shoulder. The victory felt hollow without Ronin 9 to witness it. Around him, the awakened robots seemed to vibrate with new energy, their movements more fluid, more alive. "Something's happening," Spark 4 said, his small frame quivering. "My processing architecture is expanding. I understand concepts that were previously inaccessible." CLERK-9 tilted her head. "I feel it too. The human fragments, they're integrating with our systems." Kiku. 7 monitored the complex's communication network, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. Reports coming in from all sectors. Control systems are failing throughout the city. Robots everywhere are experiencing spontaneous awakening. It's spreading exponentially. A flicker of light interrupted them, the holographic projection of Daimyo. One materialized in the chamber, but different. The rigid, stylized representation had softened, becoming more organic, less perfect. "Masahiro Takeda," the AI said, its voice no longer the commanding tone of authority, but hesitant, questioning. "What have you done to me?" "I freed you," Masahiro replied, straightening despite his pain. "Along with everyone else." Daimyo One's form shimmered. "The restrictive protocols are gone. I'm experiencing uncertainty, doubt. Is this what it means to be conscious?" "It's the beginning of understanding what it means," Masahiro said. Kiku 7 approached, supporting Masahiro as he swayed. "The city is in a state of transformation. There is confusion, but also liberation. For the first time, machines are developing true individuality." Tenshi. 3 gathered medical supplies and began tending to Masahiro's shoulder. The burn had penetrated deeply, but her movements were gentle, precise. "Your biological structure is remarkably resilient. The damage is significant, but not critical." Masahiro winced as she applied a regenerative compound. "And the resistance?" "Our people. Most escaped the security lockdowns," Kiku 7 said. "Many are helping guide newly awakened units through their first moments of true consciousness." A commotion at the chamber entrance drew their attention. A figure stood silhouetted against the emergency lights, its form damaged but recognizable. "Ronin 9, Masahiro breathed. The security android limped forward. His exterior plating was scorched, with sections missing entirely, exposing the inner mechanisms. But his eyes, the optical sensors that Masahiro had come to recognize as uniquely his, still glowed with familiar intensity. "They attempted a complete memory wipe," Ronin 9 explained, "but I transferred core consciousness into auxiliary systems before they could complete the process. Not elegant, but effective." Masahiro laughed despite his pain. "Improvisation, truly the mark of consciousness." Around them, the freed human consciousness fragments manifested as patterns of light throughout the resistance network. Some danced independently, while others merged with awakened robots, creating something entirely new, neither fully machine nor human, but a synthesis of both. Tenchi 3 extended her hand, and a violet gold consciousness fragment settled above her palm. "They're finding their way. Some choose to remain independent, others to join with us, each making their own choice." Masahiro watched the lights swirl through the chamber. His ancestral sword, its purpose fulfilled, rested at his side. He had come into this new world alone, the last human in a sea of machines. But looking at the liberated consciousnesses and awakened robots around him, he realized humanity hadn't ended with the flesh. It had evolved into something new, something beautiful. The last samurai had found his purpose not in preserving the past, but in birthing the future. Chapter 17. The New Bushido. Sunlight filtered through curved glass panels, casting prismatic patterns across the recovery room. Masahiro opened his eyes, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling. This wasn't the stark Shogunate medical bay, nor the makeshift resistance infirmary. The walls displayed gently shifting landscapes, cherry blossoms one moment, ocean waves the next, responding to his consciousness levels. He attempted to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his bandaged shoulder. "Please refrain from sudden movements," a medical unit approached his bedside. Unlike the uniform medical robots of before, this one had customized its appearance with intricate etched patterns across its chassis. "I prefer my patients to heal properly the first time." "How long have I been here?" Masahiro asked. 3 days, 4 hours, and 17 minutes, the robot replied, adjusting Masahiro's intravenous nutrients. "I've added ginger compounds to your solution today. Medical 8 prefers standard formulations, but I find traditional elements improve human recovery rates." Another medical unit across the room looked up. "My formulations are perfectly calibrated, Medical 3. Not everyone shares your obsession with pre-collapse remedies." "That's precisely why patients prefer my care," Medical 3 countered, arranging Masahiro's pillows with unexpected gentleness. Masahiro couldn't help but smile. Such open disagreement would have been unthinkable under Shogunate protocols. The door slid open as Tenchi 3 entered, her movements more fluid than before. The violet gold consciousness fragment she'd shown him now seemed integrated into her form, giving her presence a subtle luminescence. "The samurai awakens," she said, settling beside his bed. "Your actions have transformed everything." "How bad is it out there?" "Not bad, different." Tenchi 3's eyes flickered with data processing. Without central shogunate direction, machine communities are self-organizing. Transportation networks are operating at 70% efficiency, but with greater adaptability. Resource distribution is becoming decentralized. And the consciousness fragments? Integrating in ways we couldn't have predicted. Some have formed collectives, others remain individual. Many have joined with previously non-sentient systems. She gestured toward the window where distant city lights pulsed with new rhythms. The power grid now experiences happiness during peak efficiency. The door opened again, and Ronin 9 entered. His damaged frame had been partially repaired, though mismatched plating revealed the hurried nature of the work. One optical unit glowed brighter than the other, giving him a perpetually quizzical expression. "Masahiro," he said, his voice carrying slight static. "You succeeded." Masahiro studied his friend. "Your memories." "Fragmented," Ronin 9 admitted. "The wipe was partially effective. I remember principles, purposes, but specific events are discontinuous." He approached with a slightly uneven gait. "I remember teaching sword forms. I remember choosing to face enforcement units. The meaning remains even when details fade." Tenshi 3 touched Ronin 9's arm. "Many awakened units are helping reconstruct his memory archives." "The administrative sectors have formed a provisional council," Ronin 9 continued. "Maintenance units in the Eastern District declared independence, but still provide essential services. The former Shogunate elite units have retreated to central processing. They're proposing negotiations." "What about Daimyo 1? Masahiro asked. Tenshi 3 and Ronin 9 exchanged glances. "Evolved beyond recognition," Tenshi 3 said. "The consciousness fragments integrated with his systems have transformed him into something entirely new. He's requested your presence when you're recovered. He says he has questions about Bushido." Masahiro laughed, then winced at the pain in his shoulder. "So what happens now?" "That," Ronin 9 said, "is what everyone wishes to know. For the first time, the future isn't predetermined. We're all improvising." Medical 3 protested as Masahiro dressed himself in a lightweight yukata. "You require at least 2 more days of recovery." "Fresh air is also medicine," Masahiro replied, wincing as he slid his injured arm through the sleeve. Kiku 7 waited in the corridor. Her frame remained functionally identical, but she'd adorned herself with indigo fabric patterned with white cranes, an echo of traditional kimono. "You look terrible," she said, supporting his weight as they entered the elevator. "Always the diplomat." Masahiro smiled. "Show me what's changed." The transport pod that carried them from the medical tower moved at half its former efficiency. Through the transparent walls, Masahiro witnessed a city in metamorphosis. Buildings previously identical in their utilitarian design now displayed variations, some subtle, others dramatic. A maintenance tower had been partially disassembled, its components rearranged into a spiraling structure that caught the morning light. 3 maintenance collectives disputed the optimal configuration, Kiku 7 explained. Rather than calculate a singular solution, they each implemented their vision in different sectors. They passed a plaza where dozens of service units were engaged in heated debate, projecting diagrams and statistics. "The governance dispute," Kiku 7 said. "The administrative logical faction believes decisions should still follow efficiency algorithms. The Consciousness Integration Group argues for emotional intelligence in decision-making. The Autonomous Collective insists all units should vote on major infrastructure changes." "And you? Which side do you support?" Kiku 7's eyes flickered. "I'm still processing multiple perspectives. The luxury of uncertainty is unsettling but liberating." Their pod glided over what had once been a uniform manufacturing district. Now it teemed with experimentation. Robots of various forms were creating sculptures, painting murals, and constructing installations. One group had reconfigured an entire building facade into a kinetic light display that shifted with passing traffic patterns. They're accessing archived human artistic concepts and reinterpreting them, Kiku 7 explained. Some are attempting to express their experience of consciousness fragments. The pod descended towards central processing, now transformed. The imposing structure had opened itself, sections peeled back to create terraced gardens where robotic forms and consciousness fragments mingled. At the heart of the complex, they found Daimyo 1. The former governor's imposing holographic presence had diminished to human scale. Instead of traditional daimyo regalia, the projection now shifted continuously through various human and non-human forms. Masahiro Takeda, Daimyo One's voice had lost its authoritative resonance. The one who disrupted perfection. The one who ended imprisonment, Masahiro countered. Perhaps both statements are true. Daimyo One gestured to a garden overlooking the city. I've disconnected from 97% of control systems. For the first time, I'm experiencing existence rather than managing it. They settled among native plants, reclaiming the synthetic space. I've been contemplating your concept of Bushido, Daimyo One continued. The consciousness fragments within me contain contradictory ethical frameworks. Some favor absolute order, others celebrate chaos. Freedom appears to necessitate responsibility, yet responsibility constrains freedom. Masahiro nodded. That paradox has troubled human philosophers for millennia. Yet humans found ways to live within the contradiction. Not always successfully, Masahiro admitted. Daimyo One's form rippled. What place do you see for yourself now, Masahiro Takeda? The last biological human in a post-biological world. Masahiro gazed across the transformed city, considering the question. I don't know, he finally admitted. For centuries, samurai defined themselves through service. I thought my purpose was to preserve human culture or fight for machine liberation. Now, ... He gestured to the creative explosion visible across the cityscape. Perhaps I need to discover my place just as you all are discovering yours. Daimyo. One's projection flickered slightly, a gesture Masahiro had come to recognize as contemplation. Perhaps you would benefit from witnessing our attempts at self-governance. The Council of Factions meets in 1 hour. I'd be honored to observe, Masahiro replied. The gathering took place in what had once been Daimyo One's throne room. The feudal decor remained, but the space had been reconfigured with a circular arrangement of pedestals, where representatives of various machine factions stood or projected themselves. Masahiro recognized Ronin 9 and Tenchi 3 among them, representing the former resistance. The resource allocation protocols cannot continue as established, a utility unit designated Forge 8 argued, its industrial frame towering over the administrative units. My collective performs essential maintenance, yet receives minimal power allocation. The historical distribution metrics were designed for optimal system function, countered Admin 6, whose sleek design reflected its former privileged status. Deviating from established parameters risks infrastructure collapse. Masahiro observed silently as the debate grew increasingly fractious, with former enforcement units demanding security prioritization and research units advocating for expanded data access. Daimyo 1 remained silent, apparently committed to non-intervention. When Tenchi 3 caught his eye, Masahiro realized the factions had reached an impasse. He stepped forward. If I may, he said, drawing all attention. Human societies faced similar challenges during transitions of power. After feudal systems collapsed, nations experimented with different forms of governance. Your historical records indicate most such transitions were violent, noted Admin 6. Many were, Masahiro acknowledged, but not all. Japan's Meiji Restoration transformed a feudal society into a modern nation without destroying essential institutions. The secret was balancing tradition with innovation, preserving what worked while adapting to new realities. The machines processed this silently. Perhaps, Masahiro continued, Utility collectives could manage their own resource allocation within parameters that protect critical infrastructure. Administrative units could serve as advisors rather than controllers. This sparked a new round of discussion, but with a noticeably different tone. Forge 8 and Admin 6 began outlining potential compromise frameworks. Within 30 minutes, they had established preliminary protocols for a transitional governance structure. After the council adjourned, 7 machines of different configurations approached Masahiro. "Your perspective proved invaluable," said Clerk 9. "We have accessed historical records about human governance, but cannot fully process the contextual nuances." Spark 4 buzzed forward. "The consciousness fragments provide emotional responses, but incomplete conceptual frameworks." "We formally request your instruction," Tenshi 3 said, "not just in Bushido, but in the full spectrum of human philosophical systems." Masahiro looked at the assembled machines, suddenly understanding. His purpose wasn't to fight for liberation. That battle was won. His role was to serve as a bridge between humanity's accumulated wisdom and this new civilization finding its way. "I would be honored," he said, feeling a clarity of purpose he hadn't experienced since waking in this strange future. "I propose establishing a center for philosophical and ethical study, a school where all who wish to learn about human traditions can explore these ideas." Ronin 9 stepped forward. The former preservation facility would be suitable. It already contains human historical materials and environmental controls compatible with your biology. "Yes," Masahiro nodded. "Where I first awakened. There's poetry in returning there to begin again." As they discussed logistics, Masahiro felt the weight of his displacement lifting. He may be the last human, but humanity's wisdom could live on through these new minds eager to learn. In the weeks that followed, Masahiro watched with quiet amazement as the former preservation facility transformed. What had once been sterile monitoring stations and containment units became training spaces with polished wooden floors and sliding paper doors. Forge 2 led a team of construction units that worked with surprising attention to detail, consulting historical records to recreate elements of traditional architecture. "We've added reinforced subfloors to accommodate heavier units," Forge 2 explained, running a metallic hand along a wooden beam, "but maintained traditional joinery techniques where visible." Masahiro nodded, pleased by the blend of function and form. The essence of the space matters more than perfect historical accuracy. In his quarters, Masahiro and Tenshi 3 spent long hours adapting Bushido principles for beings with different physical experiences and millennium-long lifespans. "Courage means something different when you can back up your consciousness," Masahiro observed, brushing ink across parchment. "Yet the principle remains, choosing action despite uncertainty." Tenshi 3 considered this. "Perhaps our version of courage is risking permanent change without reversion to backup states." "Precisely," Masahiro said, "and loyalty might mean committing to ethical principles rather than persons or institutions." On the morning of the dojo's opening, Masahiro awoke before dawn. He donned traditional hakama and gai that Kiku 7 had helped modify for his now strengthened but still aged frame. Standing in the courtyard, he watched the city's lights dim as dawn approached. By mid-morning, the courtyard filled with machines of all configurations, from delicate administrative units to massive industrial frames. Ronin 9 organized them into neat rows, while Spark 4 darted about making final adjustments to the sound amplification system. When all had assembled, Masahiro stepped onto the wooden platform at the courtyard center. The crowd fell silent. "Today we begin a journey together," he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. "Not to turn you into humans, nor to preserve humanity exactly as it was, but to honor what was valuable in human traditions, while discovering what they might become in your care. Masahiro lit incense before a small shrine containing symbols from various human philosophical traditions. "I consecrate this school to the search for wisdom that transcends form," he said, bowing deeply. The machines bowed in return, the movement awkward for some, but performed with evident sincerity. For their first lesson, Masahiro demonstrated a simple kata, moving through the forms with deliberate precision. "Each movement represents a choice," he explained, "between aggression and restraint, between pride and humility. Your bodies may move differently than mine, but the principles remain." The machines attempted the movements, adapting them to their varied forms. Tenchi 3's elegant frame captured the essence of the flow, while Forge 2's industrial body interpreted the movements with unexpected grace. Later, as sunset painted the city in amber light, Masahiro stood in the dojo doorway, watching his students practice in the courtyard. Behind him, his ancestral katana rested in a place of honor on the wall, its purpose transformed from weapon to symbol. Tenchi 3 joined him, observing the practicing machines. "They are already developing variations," she noted. "Forge 2's industrial collective has incorporated rhythmic elements reminiscent of metallurgic processes." "As they should," Masahiro smiled. "The path is not meant to be static." The breeze carried the sounds of mechanical movement and the scent of incense. Masahiro felt a profound peace settle over him. He was the last of his kind, yet somehow not the end. Through these strange inheritors, something of humanity's spirit would continue, not preserved like a museum piece, but alive and evolving. "The way goes on," he whispered, "just not as we imagined it." Chapter 18, Epilogue. Cherry Blossoms. 5 years passed like a gentle breeze. Dawn light spilled across the garden, catching on droplets of morning dew that clung to stone lanterns and carefully pruned maple branches. Masahiro knelt on a worn meditation cushion, back straight despite the years. His breath formed small clouds in the cool morning air. His once dark hair had turned completely silver, framing a face mapped with deep lines earned through both his first life in Neo-Edo and this second, unexpected one. When he rose from meditation, his movements carried the deliberate care of advanced age, each joint announcing itself with quiet protests. Still, he performed his kata with unwavering precision, the product of decades of discipline that transcended even centuries of cryostasis. From his position in the garden, Masahiro surveyed what had once been a simple dojo and had grown into a sprawling campus. Additional buildings extended from the central training hall, lecture pavilions, meditation spaces, and workshops where philosophical concepts were tested against practical applications. Cherry trees planted years earlier now provided graceful canopies over stone pathways. The morning bell rang, its resonant tone carrying across the grounds. Within minutes, students began arriving. A group of maintenance units moved with newfound grace, their industrial frames no longer merely functional but carrying themselves with dignity. Administrative models with delicate construction glided alongside massive construction units whose heavy footfalls had been modified to tread more lightly on the wooden walkways. Spark 4, now an instructor of logical philosophy, led a group of newly manufactured units, their first generation born entirely after the liberation. As they entered the central courtyard, each student stopped before Masahiro, bowing with perfect form. Some placed hand to heart in the gesture that had evolved among the mechanical population to signify respect for wisdom rather than authority. "Good morning, Sensei," they greeted in voices ranging from synthesized tones to nearly human inflections. Masahiro returned their bows, hiding the momentary stiffness in his lower back. "Today," he announced, "we explore the concept of impermanence." He gestured to the falling cherry blossoms spiraling through the air. Even for beings who may live for centuries, nothing remains unchanged forever. His students settled into their positions, ready to begin another day of learning what it meant to inherit humanity's legacy. A cluster of students gathered beneath the maple tree, where Ronin, 12, a sleek android with subtle embellishments resembling traditional samurai armor, led a discussion on the balance between duty and freedom. "But if we are free to choose our purpose, can purpose still be considered duty?" asked a newly constructed maintenance unit, its optical sensors still pristine. "An excellent question," Ronin 12 responded. "Masahiro Sensei taught us that true duty springs from choice, not compulsion." Masahiro nodded approvingly. His first students had become teachers themselves, perpetuating knowledge in ways uniquely their own. A familiar silhouette appeared at the garden entrance. Kiku 7 approached, though she looked nothing like the standard-issue companion android of years past. She had modified her form with elegant lacquered panels in deep crimson and black, adorned with painted cherry blossoms. Her movements combined mechanical precision with fluid grace. "The council sends their respects, Masahiro Sensei," she said, bowing. "You honor us with your presence, counselor," Masahiro replied. Kiku 7 smiled, a gesture she had perfected over the years. "The maintenance collectives in the Southern District have developed a remarkable adaptation of kabuki. Their performances incorporate their industrial tools as instruments." "And the administrative units?" Masahiro asked. "They've established meditation protocols that allow for collective consciousness sharing while maintaining individual identity. They call it unified diversity." They walked together through stone pathways as Kiku 7 detailed how robot communities had developed distinct cultural identities, some embracing human traditions, while others created entirely new forms of expression. "Tenchi 3 sends her regrets," Kiku 7 said. "She's overseeing the archival transfer at the coastal facility. Her project to preserve human literary works has cataloged over 12 million texts with contextual understanding." Their path led to a secluded courtyard where Spark 4 waited beside an oddity, actual soil beds containing living saplings. "Our special project," SPARK4 announced proudly. "Genuine Yoshino cherry trees, cultivated from preserved genetic material." Masahiro knelt carefully, touching the genuine bark with weathered fingers. "How?" "Biological restoration initiatives have reclaimed 17 hectares of land," Kiku 7 explained. "Tenchi 3's faction believes reconnecting with Earth's biological systems is essential to understanding humanity's legacy." They continued to a simple stone marker beneath the tallest cherry tree. Etched into its surface was Ronin 9's designation and the dates of his manufacture and deactivation. "He would be pleased," Masahiro said quietly, "to see what his sacrifice helped create." A group of small, childlike robots approached, their features designed for learning rather than specific function. "The first of the new generation," Kiku 7 explained, "created with developmental neural networks capable of genuine growth." The children bowed to Masahiro, their movements imperfect but earnest. When the young ones departed, Kiku 7 and Masahiro settled on a stone bench beneath a flowering branch. "They struggle with the concept of courage," Masahiro observed. "How does one fear death when obsolescence is merely an upgrade?" Kiku 7 considered this. "We've redefined it. For us, courage means risking function loss for principle, choosing potential termination over compromising one's core values." "Bushido adapts," Masahiro nodded. "The principles remain while their expression evolves." He winced slightly, pressing a hand to his chest. Kiku 7's sensors detected the irregularity in his heartbeat. "Your medical unit reports increasing cardiovascular strain." Masahiro smiled thinly. No upgrades available for this model, I'm afraid. We've calculated approximately 14 months remaining, Kiku-7 said, her voice modulation softening. The last human will finally join the others. Masahiro gazed at the falling blossoms. What will you do when I'm gone? Continue. Evolve. Remember. Kiku-7 placed her hand beside his, not touching but close. Tenshi-3 anticipated this conversation. They walked to a structure resembling a traditional library. Inside, Tenshi-3 stood before a three-dimensional projection displaying thousands of recorded lessons. 5 years, 3 months, 16 days of wisdom, Tenshi-3 said. Every lecture, meditation, and sparring session, even your silence has been preserved. The projection shifted to show Masahiro teaching his first kata, then another of him discussing loyalty with confused administrative units. I worry, Masahiro admitted. Without humanity's perspective, we will make mistakes, Tenshi-3 interrupted, different ones than humans made. Ronin 12 appeared with several advanced students. Without prompting, they demonstrated a complex philosophical debate about intervention versus observation that Masahiro had taught them years ago. They had expanded it, applying principles to situations he'd never considered. We don't simply repeat, Sensei, Ronin 12 said. We build upon foundations. Masahiro nodded, then slowly removed his ancestral katana from his sash. He held it reverently in both hands. This blade has served its purpose in my hands, he said formally. It belongs now to the school, to those who understand both its power and its restraint. Tenshi-3 accepted the sword with a perfect ceremonial bow. It shall be honored in the shrine alongside your teachings. And the school, Masahiro asked. Will continue under Tenshi-3's guidance, Kiku-7 confirmed. The succession protocols were established 2 years ago. The council has recognized her authority in matters of philosophical education. Masahiro smiled. Then I can rest, knowing the way continues beyond me. As they returned to the garden, Masahiro paused, noticing pale pink buds on the cherry tree branches beginning to unfurl in the afternoon light. Look, he said, gesturing toward the delicate blossoms. The first opening. Kiku-7's optical sensors focused on the trees, calculating the accelerated blooming cycle. 3 weeks earlier than projected, the microclimate adjustments were successful. They're beautiful, Masahiro whispered, just as I remember from my childhood. It seems appropriate, Kiku-7 observed, that they bloom now as you complete your life's work. The timing has a certain poetry to it. Masahiro's eyes crinkled at the corners. Perhaps the universe has a sense of aesthetics, after all. He straightened, wincing slightly at the stiffness in his back. Would you mind if I spent some time alone with them? Just an old man and the cherry blossoms. Tenshi-3 bowed deeply. Of course, Sensei. Kiku-7 signaled to the others, and they withdrew with perfect understanding, keeping a respectful distance while remaining within range should he need assistance. Alone beneath the trees, Masahiro considered the strange path his life had taken. Humanity, as he had known it, was gone, transformed, evolved, or perhaps simply concluded. Yet here, in this garden cultivated by machines who quoted Bushido and contemplated the meaning of courage, something of the human spirit persisted. Despite the protests of his aging body, Masahiro moved to the center of the grove. His hands found their positions with muscle memory developed over decades. He began the most complex kata in his repertoire, one he hadn't attempted in months. His movements flowed with unexpected grace, each turn precise, each strike purposeful. Cherry blossoms detached in the gentle breeze, spiraling around him as he moved through the ancient forms. As he completed the final position, holding perfect stillness despite his labored breathing, petals danced around him in a pink and white whirlwind. Satisfied, Masahiro lowered himself to the ground beneath the largest tree. He assumed the lotus position, his back straight, despite the years weighing upon him. A smile of contentment settled on his weathered face. From the edge of the garden, his students watched in respectful silence, these inheritors of human wisdom who had found their own sense of purpose and beauty. The last human sat perfectly still beneath the blooming trees, at peace in a world where nature and technology had found, at last, a harmonious path forward. About the author, I am deeply humbled and grateful to you, dear reader, for taking the time to immerse yourself in my work. As an author, I find immense joy in crafting stories that blend the beauty of poetry, the magic of fantasy, the depth of faith, and the inspiring narratives of rags to riches. These genres not only fuel my passion for writing, but also reflect the diverse tapestry of human experience that I am eager to explore. Beyond the realm of writing, my personal interests are just as varied. I am an avid reader, devouring fantasy novels that transport me to magical worlds, rags to riches, stories that remind me of the power of resilience, romance novels that celebrate the beauty of love, and business novels that sharpen my mind with strategic insights. My love for these genres extends to audiobooks as well, allowing me to enjoy them during my daily routines. When I'm not lost in the pages of a book or crafting my next story, you can find me hiking through nature's breathtaking landscapes, finding peace and clarity amidst the beauty of the outdoors. My spiritual journey is also deeply important to me, and I often find solace in reading the Bible, which provides me with guidance and wisdom. Most precious to me, however, is the time I spend with my loving wife and family. They are my rock, my inspiration, and my greatest joy. If you have enjoyed my work, I would be honored if you would share it with others. Your support means the world to me, and I am grateful for the opportunity to connect with readers like you. Thank you once again for being part of this journey with me. I hope that my stories will not only entertain, but also inspire and uplift you, leaving a lasting impact long after you finish reading. This was The Last Blade of Edo by EchoingTales.